Welcome to the Growing Your Financial Business the Woman's Way podcast. I'm Robyn Crane, and I was a financial advisor for over a decade. But before that, I was a singer-songwriter. And now, even as a mom of three with a teenager, toddler, and a baby, I run a seven-figure business helping women in financial services grow their businesses and make a bigger impact. In this podcast, I'll bring you financial advisors, industry influencers, and highly successful entrepreneurs to give you innovative strategies designed for women. So get ready to learn how to get in front of the right people, get more ideal clients, and be able to grow your ideal business so you can live your ideal life. Welcome to the Growing Your Financial Business the Woman's Way podcast. I'm Robyn Crane, and I'm here. I'm very, very excited to announce I'm here with Christine Shaw, who is the CEO of Investment News. So this is so exciting to have you here. And I know you have your own podcast. So to step aside from your own podcast and to join me on mine is great. Your podcast is called Her Success Matters. I get that right?
You did, Robyn. Yes. Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here today. And I love the collaboration. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It is so amazing to find other strong women who are committed to the success of women, especially in the financial services industry. So thank you.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. So tell me a little about your journey, because I didn't have to read your bio to be impressed because I knew about you before reading your bio, but I'm like, she's CEO of Investment News. Like, that's amazing. And I know a little about your background, but I don't know that all the listeners do. But tell us a little bit how you got to become the CEO. Because I know you had your vision around it. And then just any challenges to getting to that level as far as because you're a woman and anything along the path.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So what probably a lot of listeners don't know, because mostly I'm interviewing other women to tell their story, is that I actually got married at 17 years old. So I did not have this big ambition to say, I want to become the CEO. At the time, I was in high school. It was my senior year of high school, and I was really good at math and science classes. I was, it was interesting because I was very quick and could study things really well, but I also got bored fast. So anyway, I ended up getting married, and then I ended up getting a job in a software company. And I was balancing being a mom, being a wife, working in that environment. And I just figured out that I really had this passion to learn, and I loved being in a corporate environment. I shouldn't say it was a family-owned software company, but it went on to do really well. And that's when really my career started. And then I landed in global media and spent 18 years about 20 years prior to coming to Investment News. But through that career, I have been able to travel the world. I have been able to work on mergers, acquisitions. I have been able to work in many industries doing what I love, which is connecting people and providing great quality content and growing my personal career along the way. So it was probably around when I was in my mid-40s that my children were both successfully launched and in their own careers that I said, I actually want to become a CEO. And I put forth a path to create the opportunity to do that. And so here I am today.
See, I love that you said, I put forth the path to create the opportunity to do that. Like, so many people think things are happening to them and the opportunity is coming as they go, but you created it, you made it happen. And had you not done that, had you not made that decision, had you not decided I'm going to make this happen, pretty much it wouldn't have happened.
You're spot on. A lot of times, so I did not, because I chose to get married at a very young age and because of my financial circumstances, I didn't have the opportunity to go to college in a traditional path. So I did accelerated courses at MIT and within the media industry as well. And what I realized is that because I didn't have the typical background, that it was not going to be an easy path. I've always been goal-oriented. So what I started to do, probably in my 30s, I was fortunate enough to have a business coach or access to a business coach through my work. And she taught me how to create what we call a circle of life. And the way she put it is, you really have to make sure that all areas of your life stay in balance, because like a wheel, you cannot propel forward motion unless you're in balance. And that was all about getting clear about what's important to you. So what was important to me was financial independence, being healthy, being in charge of my own destiny. And so every year I create my vision statement based on all of those. And every quarter I have an appointment with myself to review my success and the KPIs that I set for myself. So yeah, it was right around in my 40s. I'm like, okay, this is my next step and path. So these are the things that I need to be doing in order to get to that goal.
Can you go into that more? Because that's awesome. And I love that. And I absolutely believe that, we create our own success, and there's so much, doesn't mean there aren't obstacles. Like, both of us, making it in a male dominant industry, and we're helping women in the financial industry. Obviously there are obstacles, but knowing what you want is usually hard for people, first of all. And they don't even, spend a lot of time on it. And then knowing, like, even just these little, let's call them tricks or tools to be able to get there, and that you're consistent with it, and that you're doing it. And right now it sounds like you don't have a business coach, and you're doing it anyway, right? Every quarter and every year. So tell us a little bit about, like, if you were to tell them, here's what I recommend, like, how do they get clear on what they want, and what is it that they can do on a quarterly and annual basis to get them there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because I will tell you, and as I didn't set out knowing what I want. And sometimes it changes, to be perfectly honest, right? That's the world we live in. It's constantly evolving. But it goes back to the circle of life, because if you first get real with yourself about what matters, it's not driven about necessarily what you want, but it's the things that make you happy. So for example, I put huge value on family. I come from a large Italian family, and the ability to have time with my family, to spend holidays, to vacation together, to have Sunday dinner, that's important to me, and having a close relationship. So family first, always. That's how I was raised. And so I needed to ensure I could have that. Financial freedom. My mom went through a really rough divorce, and it left her in a really tough financial position. And when I was a young girl, I had the task, because I was the strongest personality, not surprising, of my siblings. And so it was always like, I had to ask my dad for the child support check when he would come pick us up. And so that left a mark in me, saying, I never want to ask a man for money, and I will never depend on a man for money. So that set something within me that was just developed in my childhood years. And then other things like health and fitness, well-being, friends is really important. Certain hobbies, like I'm an avid boater. I've been boating since I was a really young child. At 14, I could boat before I could drive a car. So having time to have that stuff. So it's about understanding the things that really make you happy and will make your life feel fulfilled. And for me, that's what developed some clarity on my career as I went along the way. And in fact, in my earlier years, it was about not becoming a CEO, but I wanted to earn enough to pay for my children's education and to help them and to provide them with things that were hard for me, being a child of divorce, always worrying about that check and where the money was going to come from. So I didn't want my children to have to do that. So I knew it was going to be dependent on me. So then along the way, you start to get clear, and then you pivot, because, at that time, I also didn't think I would want to become a CEO, because there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And if I had young children at home or things I needed to tend to, I wouldn't have had the time to devote to do this job while balancing all of that.
Right. So then going back to the circle of life. So I know something similar, and I don't know if this is exactly what you mean, but I know Tony Robbins talks about, like you said, it becomes a wheel, right? So you have all these things around the circle, and then those are the different values. And then do you, on a quarterly basis, this is what you're talking about, like you're rating them? Or, because that's what I did with Tony Robbins. It was like, oh, I'm a 4 when it comes to my spirituality or something like that. And you're like, I better work on that, right? So then because that's not an even wheel, and that's a really rugged type of road.
Yeah, so it seems it's actually as simple as, you can download them online, but drawing that circle out, and yeah, you put in markings around the rankings, and then that tells you where the wheels are out of balance. But then what I do is, so I write an actual vision statement. It's called Christine Shaw Vision Statement. And I write it, it's updated. It's always like a 1, 2, 3 year outlook. And then within that, so I divide it up into the sections that are in the wheel. And then I put very specific goals within each of those, very specific KPIs. And then I reflect back and go, okay, what did I accomplish? What do I need more work on? What do I need to tune in? And that tells you when you're getting off track, and you can go back to that value to say, am I okay with this part being off track? Am I willing to sacrifice something else for it? And so it's a constant, just, creating the time to review that with discipline.
That is amazing. I love that. There's a reason people are successful. So many people who I talk to and that I know that are super successful, they have some sort of routine like that. So whether it's, writing down goals every day and looking at your goals, or whether it's, doing something physical with your body, not that it's always daily, but there's some sort of rituals or some sort of routine that they're doing to keep their mind sharp, to keep their spirituality sharp, to keep their body sharp so that they can get what they want. And I think that's such a good example of what specifically, the listeners can do. Because I think everyone out there listening has a goal. Sometimes you don't know what you want, but like you said, I really like that you can start with, well, what's most important to you, instead of just, I want to make more money, or I want to make $10,000 a month, or $100,000 a month, or whatever it is, which a lot of us are just randomly creating goals with no true intention behind it or knowing what it really means. But instead starting with the values and what everything, like the meaningful parts of your life, and then figuring out how to get there. And then you're like, oh, a CEO would fit well because that would actually solve all the problems. Like, I'll make good money. I get to run a company. I have time with my family. Well, I guess your family's, the kids are older, so now you can do it. That's cool. What obstacles have you had? I mean, obviously there's probably many, but can you share a big vulnerability where, I know you even felt like it's like something you typically would not want to share? Because I love capturing those things, because I do really feel like when we share those things, even just you and I feel closer to you because you're being vulnerable, and especially the listeners be able to resonate with those things. Can you think of a time like that?
Oh, many. So, there were lots of obstacles, and I think that, and I'll share a few, but that's the thing, Robyn, is you have to also not just have the discipline of being able to go through these habits and goals, but the grit and perseverance to stay the course, because you're going to get thrown off quite a lot. In the earlier years, I would say, it was judgment from other people and other women and other mothers, because my career started to take off at a young age, and people would say to me things like, oh, you're going to be on the road again. Even my ex-mother-in-law, whom I love dearly, but she would always have that commentary of, oh, you're traveling again. Oh, Billy's going to be home with the kids, So one is having the inner confidence and not letting that become the narrative, and having a good support system. I was fortunate. My husband was an amazing support system and did great at helping with the children and taking care of them when I traveled for my job. But a lot of it was the judgment, because, you would hear all this stuff and you would stay the course, but you would question yourself, like, as a human, as a mother, am I doing the right things? And that's hard. Right now, I have the benefit of my children being grown and we're best friends and they're successful. So now I can say, yes, they're great. But when you're in those years, it's not easy. And then, in the early days of media in particular, there were no women at the top. And it was really hard. I will tell you, probably one of the most challenging moments was, I was just talking about this the other day. It was 9/11, and I was actually booked on American Flight 11. And I had to cancel that flight, thank goodness, because I had this issue going on within the team I managed. And it was this gentleman who just did not like the idea of this young woman coming in as the publisher, and he was doing everything in his power to try to get me fired. So we called this emergency meeting, which ended up canceling that flight. So in the end, it worked out. And he literally referred to me and my background in front of everyone that now reported to me as white trash. And I was like, that was a moment where I was like, oh my God. And then, the world around us is falling apart. It's 9/11. So there was one part of me that just wanted to like crawl up, run out of that room and just go away. And then I'm like, I'm not going to let someone like that win. And, to the years later, he came and apologized to me. And he said, now that I've gotten to know you and how great you are. And he's like, I really owe you an apology. And we are great friends now. And it's just really funny. So, But that's just one of many things. Like there's a lot of stories like that where you're the only woman, or all the crude jokes, and you don't know what to do. Is it okay? Should you laugh along? Should you, what do you do? So there was a lot of those moments, and it takes really a lot of confidence, perseverance, and sometimes you just have to, what's the word? Find a support system to help you get through those moments, because those are difficult. And fortunately, with the evolution of social media, good or bad, that behavior is becoming less tolerated. It still exists, but now people get called out for bad behavior, irresponsible behavior such as that. So that's a good thing, I think.
Even the fact that, well, first of all, that's insane. I just have to comment on that. Like, that's insane that you're supposed to be on that flight and all that happened, which is just another testament to, I mean, everything happens for a reason. Like, we get mad, oh man, I missed the flight, oh, I had to do this, and like, oh, it's like we can't see the whole picture. So that's amazing. But also, I think just what's incredible about that is here's someone who's calling you white trash, which could be like obviously a very hurtful thing, an embarrassing thing, humiliating thing that could have taken you aback and, changed the path because of what one person says. Because this happens to us, right? We have these moments and someone says something and clearly he wasn't a bad guy. If you're friends now, clearly, like, the fact that you can even forgive him is really amazing. Like, that you didn't hold it against him for the rest of eternity. But I think there's so many times where we'll interpret something and maybe he did something and he didn't realize like how hurtful it would be. Obviously he did enough to apologize, but that we, especially as women, we can't forget it. We take it in. It starts bringing up all these other beliefs that we have about ourselves and why we're not good enough because one person said boo, as I usually call it, say boo, you're not good. Like, and actually I think, as much as, like you said, social media has helped in a lot of ways, I think there's so much fear of judgment because we have the opportunity now to put ourselves out there, but someone could say those negative things. The more you put yourself out there, the more people can hide behind their computers now. They can say whatever they want. And sometimes they, all they are is some sort of, handle. It doesn't seem to have a face behind it, but it's like some sort of human there. So I think that's really a great lesson just for the listeners here, is that like someone is going to say, especially like I like to say, actually, I was talking to Letitia, who works at Investment News. So obviously you work with, and she was saying, and I know you mentioned this on one of your podcasts as well, but there was some, negative tweeting going on about not having enough diversity or something like that. And I was talking to her about it. And I was like, I think that's good. And I know that sounds really like a horrible thing to say, but I said, I think it's good that people are criticizing, because I said, if you're not getting criticized, you're not trying hard enough. And that's like hard for people to hear, because we, especially as women, like we take it to heart because you guys are doing so much to help people. Of course, like you're trying to include everyone. But it's like some people want to criticize. And I actually think like, oh, I must be doing something right. I don't like it. I hate it. It makes me feel crappy, but I'm thinking, oh, I must be doing something right, because there's going to be someone who's going to say boo. And if I'm not putting myself out there, if I'm not trying hard enough, then no one cares. So
yeah, it's interesting.
Crazy, but
I just recently watched The Social Dilemma from Netflix, which shows the good and the bad of social media, right? But it does create a lot more accountability. And some people do use their platforms in a very negative or non-helpful way, but there's others that luckily, like in that situation, I was able to make direct contact with the person, have a conversation. And actually, I think it's going to lead us to do some exciting work around more diversity and inclusion and how we can do a better job. So I think that as humans, we have to be intentional but careful and thoughtful with our words and how we speak with people, because you're right. I mean, most human people, I want to believe, are good natured and don't intend to hurt somebody, but a term you may use may have unintentional consequences if you're not aware. And I think the big thing that this podcast series has taught me, and listening to social media, is becoming a better listener and also figuring out what adjustments you can make. But getting back to the point though, we're always going to have detractors. And so that's the thing, is being able to separate the noise and knowing, okay, you're going to just have people who want to make negative comments, but you have to have the strength to figure out and strip away what is stuff that you should just ignore, because it's not coming from a good place or it's just untrue, and what is stuff that you should lean into and understand and make adjustments or improvements on. And that's not easy to do always, but yeah.
My husband says to me, because apparently outwardly my clients would think I'm not that defensive, but apparently in at least my family life and in the real world, at least here at home, he says, Robyn, just because it's not a compliment does not mean that it's criticism. And I'm like,
I love that.
But it feels like, because like he'll say something and I'm like, well, that's not true. I'm doing what I can. I'm trying, like, let's just say, oh, you're working late tonight. That's just an observation. I'm like, well, I was with the kids last night. I made dinner, and I start to like defend, like it's, like something he's saying. And he's like, it's not a criticism. It's just a comment. It's just an observation. I'm like, okay. Sorry. That's me. So I think there's so much that we internally take on because, we don't want to feel criticized or feel like we're doing something wrong, whether it's as a mom, as a business owner, as a coach, as an advisor, whatever it is. But I think that's also the power that like we as humans are growing and continuing to grow, to be able to take that to help others and to serve, just like you said, that you now had conversation with this woman, and I probably was not ill-intended. It was just that was, her observation that felt like a criticism. And then now it's going to be better for the greater good, like to be the right person who can take on that as not criticism, as something like, oh, how can I see this as feedback that I can even be better? I think that's a hard place that I'm not always good at, but I'm like trying to get better because I want to provide so much value to my clients. And I'm like, okay, please tell me how I can do this better, because I truly want to serve so badly. So I think that's amazing. I think that says a lot about you and your company as well, just to be able to take that on and be like, okay, cool. Like, how can we improve? It's amazing. So getting back to, well, here, as far as advice, I would say that you might give some listeners, especially these are women, in the financial insurance industry who really do want to succeed. They want to make a bigger impact. That's always my driving force, is to, really help and serve. Anything you'd give them, because you have a lot of nuggets here, but anything else you'd kind of give to them as good advice or to-dos?
Yeah. So one thing I do myself is I ensure I'm constantly upskilling. And I think that a lot of times, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard things like, well, we didn't do things like that in my day, or that's all new, whatever. You have to absolutely continue to upskill yourself. So for example, if someone would have told me 15 years ago that you have to be completely tech savvy and be able to navigate all these different tech platforms and CRM systems and all that, I think that I would be like, oh no, of course not, right? So always understand the skills that are relevant in the industry, and make sure that you put time every year, invest time into growing your skill set, learning new skills, and staying relevant. I also think that becoming experts at using technology to create more human time. So people think of technology as replacing the human factor, and it actually increases the human factor, because when you can use technology like an effective CRM to get to know your clients and to be really specific about your clients, and let the technology do all that hard work you would have had to manually do, that frees you up for more client calls and building that relationship, which allows you to actually get to know them better and create a better investment strategy for them. So I think is particularly for financial advisors and for women, is allow technology to become your friend and to help you run your business or your practice so that you can do better.
That's such good advice. I'm excited about that, because I think sometimes we're like, oh, that's not my thing. I'm not good at that. Well, it's like, you don't have a choice, even with coronavirus and now everybody being forced to be on Zoom. And like, I oftentimes I'm telling them, like you said, you have an O-ring light, I have an O-ring light, like get a light, get a camera, make sure you don't look like, sometimes I get on calls with my clients and like someone, I'm on Zoom with a group and like someone's in the dark and I'm like, I would not want to work with, like, that's scary. It's like, let me take over your finances. Like, no, whoa. Like, I want to see your face. Like, and we don't have necessarily the luxuries we had before of being able to meet everybody face to face. But I think it's such an amazing opportunity, because now we can actually have, like, I feel like I'm in the same room with you without having to take any risk. So we have these opportunities, and that means like learning technology. And you're talking about like real systems, like CRM systems, using calendars, all this stuff. But that is huge, because that's a time saver systems in general, time saver, but being able to use technology, sometimes we just always want a human to do it. And sometimes you can just get like all these amazing systems and software to do the things for you. So that's great advice. It doesn't usually come up. So I love that. Awesome. Well, let's tell them where they can find you. One is your podcast, and then tell us the rest as well.
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn at LinkedIn Christine A. Shaw. You can find me at Twitter at Christine A. Shaw. You can find me at Investment News and cshaw at investmentnews.com. So,
is there anything you want them to do, anything they can do to support Investment News, to support your mission, to help you along the path? I know you don't need a lot of help. You're just this strong woman, but
we all need help. So yeah, absolutely. I would love to connect with more amazing women in financial services. We are always looking for great speakers for our women advisor community. I would love more women to also subscribe to our newsletter because we give a lot of great advice out there. And we're going to be launching some exciting training courses with Erin Botsford. There's a lot of information out there for our female advisors that can be taken advantage of and have their voice heard in the conversation, because that's the most important thing we can do.
That's great. And that's best to go to investmentnews.com for that?
Yes. And there's a women advisor section in the navigation, and they will see that.
Okay. Do not go anywhere else, ladies. Go do that right now. Definitely get in on that. That's amazing. And I've been at your events. I've spoken at your events. Like, I know how high caliber it is and how much amazing, like just such a good resource and such amazing information. So thank you so much for joining me. This has been incredible. And
thank you for having me, Robyn.
Yeah, my pleasure to have you. And we'll definitely make sure everybody does that.
Awesome. Yes. And let's help women make more money for themselves and their clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.